Hello everyone and welcome back to DCS World and Enigma's Cold War server, and welcome to the HIP. This was my first time taking the HIP out, the Mi-8, on a proper multiplayer mission, and it just so happened that this was over on the new Split Caucus map for Enigma's Cold War, which was said to be really good for helicopters, and I have to say I agree with that. So absolutely ideal, and had a lot of fun here. Now I was on comms in this one with Gerard and Lupin, but Gerard was being taught how to fly the Hind, and as anyone who's flown the Hind will know, that involves quite a lot of teething pain, so most of the voice comms was just them talking about how to fly it and what went wrong. So for this I'll be doing a docs debrief where I'll give a full voiceover. So anyway, let's dive in. So our initial plan was for me to head ahead and do some recon troops, get them dropped near the front so the Hind could come in behind me and check things out. This is me just as I'm reaching the front line, just see me checking the map there a couple times just to make sure that I am actually going to drop, since we do need to be in enemy territory to unload the troops. Now, this is my first attempt at a kind of combat landing in the HIP, and really it's a lot smoother than the Hind. It's really quite easy to keep it nice and level here as I'm slowing down. I could certainly do with being a bit more aggressive, but still learning it. Really just coming in, keeping an eye on the vertical indicator, making sure that I've got a nice gentle descent as I'm coming in, and just generally bleeding off the speed, double checking there as I'm coming to a stop that I have in fact crossed the border, and then just slow it down. Helicopter nicely goes, and it's pretty good at rolling on the ground, so it can do a bit of a rolling landing. Otherwise then it's just time to unload, and here I realise I've made a mistake. I had forgotten the recon troops. I accidentally tried to load special forces, which I no longer had room for. So I do have combat troops here. I drop off all 12 combat troops, but then no recon guys. Now I do try and pick up here. I don't like lingering near the troops, mostly because I'm a lot easier to see than the ground troops, and so it makes them a lot more vulnerable. If I take a rocket, they all die. So just picked up there, started heading south to do some Caesar operations, and then get the alert that I have done a load of damage. Multiple hits there. I never exactly checked how many that was, but that was right in the middle. That might have been a full 12 targets destroyed there. But here I'm trying to RTB to pick up some troops when I get buzzed by a Viggen, and he just makes a single guns pass on me. Unfortunately, as you can tell here, he hits something major. My tail rotor seems to still be intact, but I don't think it's operating, and so I go into the ground. There goes my first combat sortie on Enigma, but did some damage. But anyway, take off again, head back towards the front, landing at a slightly different part of the front now, just a little bit further southwest than I first came down in. A little bit of a sideways landing, but again the HIP is really quite forgiving in terms of how it can land. And this is definitely my favourite part of the HIP, just how many soldiers you can fit in there. It is like a bloody clown car. Just unload an absolute bunch. Now again, I want to move a little bit here. I decide that what I'm going to do is I'm just going to taxi forward. That seems like a sensible kind of compromise, not bothering to take off again. This can taxi quite well on the ground, so I'll just taxi forward so that if I get spotted, they're less likely to actually spot the VDV that I've just dropped off. Unfortunately, just here as I'm kind of starting to circle around so I can keep an eye on my troops, I realise they've all started to run, which is really bad because they're running right into my propeller, and there was some squishing noises, and now they're stood around looking a little bit shocked, and then the server starts to lag. and I nearly bin it several times. So, yeah, lesson bit learned there. Don't try and do what I was doing there and properly take off and move away, because as I come back round here, zoom in a little bit, there is 3 dead paratroopers. Got taken out by my tail. Oops. The rest go on their merry way, quite happily running away from my helicopter at this point. They go on to do their job, but yeah, I need to watch that clearly. So I'm just orbiting here, and while I am orbiting, they'll get another 5 vehicles destroyed. Luckily I still have 9 remaining troops, they can still do a fair amount of damage. And then I didn't really get very far. I was trying to do some Caesar, but before I could even really get my bearings, these guys had done their job. And so just a case for me to come in, pick them up again, and then we're still right in the combat area, so I don't really need to adjust much before dropping them off again. Yeah, really nice with the hip. You can taxi on the ground really easily. I am getting a bit nervous though. There are a lot of blue aircraft in the air here. That is, I think 2 A4s and a Sabre flying overhead. Thankfully they can't see me on EWR. And there, just while I'm looking at that, my recon comes in, 31 troops spotted, so I am really happy. Really lit up the front lines there. And the recon troops happen to spawn where my helicopter's already parked, so they just immediately board. And I just start planning out here, decide to fly over the village and park in the clearing in between the two. Should still have cover from any ground fire, but should be nice and clear to be within range. You can already see smoke in the air. The other hind is going in and hitting targets. I'm just coming in here, again doing a little bit of a rolling landing. Nice flat terrain here. Nice rugged hip wheels, make that really quite easy. Landing at a fair bit of a rate, but without any issues there. So eventually slow down, come to a stop. I mean to dump all of my troops at that point. Sorry, I was getting confused with the section. I do drop all of my troops. They take out 9 in total on that run, huge amount of damage. And then I am just left to come back in. Unfortunately the server starts to get a massive lag spike as I'm coming in here, which is very terrifying to try and land while not being able to see what you're doing. Thankfully, helicopter manages to land a little bit rough, but it does make it down. So, a little bit of a heart attack, but never mind. And just pick up my guys again. These are still my original recon troops off to my side. As I'm just coming forward, that unfortunately leaking hind is Judas flying around there. He's taken some ground fire at this point. Still in the air, but not doing too great. I just chuck out my crew. And this is really what I'm enjoying about the hip. You can just do so much damage when you find an area with high density of enemies. You can just dump your troops out, pick them up, dump them out straight away again. Sending out the recons just to make sure everything's fine. By the time I pick up the recon troops, my standard troops have already done their job and have wiped out a huge section of the front once again. So I'm just close on them, pick them up. No point dropping my recon troops at this point. I've got everything in the nearby area. Instead I decide to go and do a little bit of Caesar and recon as I'm pushing forward here. Move further north, trying to scout some more targets. well, sorry, not so much north as west to gather some more targets. And then again, even a relatively vertical landing is quite easy. Again, this helicopter is just an absolute joy to fly. I'm probably handling it very roughly compared to what I should, but even for me as a new player, this is definitely feeling really nice. Now, I do decide to finally actually make a point of trying to do it. Caesar pick up here, we can see the flaring that started. Now, really awkward position here. The downed paratrooper or downed pilot is in a village in a forest. You can see him just flaring there. He's right next to the trees. I decide I'm going to try and put it down here, just between the tree line below me and the house off my 1 to 2 o'clock there. And definitely this would be a landing that I would really, really struggle on with the Hind. I find it very, very difficult to do any kind of vertical manoeuvring in the Hind. It just very easily gets into VRS. Whereas this is actually quite stable. I'm doing a purely vertical landing at this point. Not getting to VRS issues. Landing speed is nice and steady at about 1 to 2 meters per second. Landing descent stops as I enter ground effects, so just lower the collective, bonk it down right next to a tree, and close enough to grab that Caesar troop. So then as I'm continuing, move to a different section of the front here, I do notice there are all sorts of things going off along the river there. See, bullets being exchanged, something just went straight into the water there. And decide, well, I've seen an enemy target. One thing I haven't really tried on this run is using the ground attack ordnance. I've got a bunch of rockets, so arm the rockets. First spray there was a bit of a test to make sure I've got them set up correctly so I don't get anywhere near the target. Slowly approaching, I do almost get hit by an artillery shell there. I didn't notice at the time how close that came, but you could see it briefly on the replay. Then fire a bunch of rockets into the area. As the smoke settles, you can see I got that one remaining thing. I probably should have shot at the bunker there. I've just noticed there is an intact bunker, but that is as much for now. Now, something hit me. I don't know what hit me here. I do get a report that there is a jet above me. I don't know if that's a jet firing in. I don't know if it's some other thing that's shot nearby. Either way, I try and RTB at this point. As I'm RTBing, I see this other guy flaring and can't help myself but want to try and pick him up on the way back. And this is where I'm getting a little bit overconfident. I try and do a bit of a combat turn here, and if you look at my vertical speed, it just starts to plunge. And unfortunately, my helicopter has clipped through the ground here. The nose is stuck in the ground, I can't move, and as soon as I try and move, it rips off the tail. Bit unfortunate that I clipped through the ground, but if the server's working properly, I probably would have just broken the plane immediately on contact, so not too bad. So yeah, learnt a lot, really had a lot of fun. This helicopter is really a lot of fun to fly. It's almost as easy to fly as the Hui, but can carry a bunch more people, bunch more munitions. I am really looking forward to taking this out some more, and definitely is very, very effective. The amount of damage you can do to the front line is absolutely insane. So yeah, let me know what you think, let me know what your experience has been with the HIP, and I hope to catch you in future videos. Until then, remember to be kind to yourselves and everyone else. Cheers.